from all the way from Absat, Virginia, Dale Brown from CiderMarket.com. Welcome, Dale.
Thank you all. I really appreciate the introduction, Mike, and also the association for the opportunity to be here as an invited speaker to you all. This is a great organization. It's a great cider community. I'm going to give you some facts and a few things about your community today that might help you know where you fit within that community. So, in the interest of full disclosure, I need to point out, well, we have 2 apple trees on our property, and I have made some cider that no one liked. We are not commercial cider makers or apple growers. What we are very interested in keen observers of your community, and we've been doing that for nearly 8 years now. So longer, as I'll point out in a little bit, longer than most of you in this room have been in the community. So we're going to talk about that. Briefly about our website, the Cider Market. Although drinking cider for a lot of years, pushing Nielsen's curve on boomers who drink cider, we were drinking it a long time ago. And in 2010, though, in one of our many trips to England, where we were visiting family, and again having great UK cider, we came back to the US and we could not find what we wanted to drink. We just weren't able to locate it in 2010. And not because there weren't some good craft ciders being made in 2010, simply hard to locate, hard to procure if you're in Virginia, for example, as opposed to being in Portland or somewhere around Washington or Michigan where you had many more ciders available to you locally that we didn't have in 2010 in Virginia. So we started the Cider Market as a website, and the website's intended to help connect cider drinkers with cider makers. So we felt we were going to be in there and help you generate your traffic, if you will, to your sites, but also ensure that me, for my own good, can find good ciders when I want to have it. And this is so we went and put this together for everyone. So in 2011, we actually launched the Cider Market itself, put the website online, and we're focused on connecting the drinkers. In 2013, well, first off, in 2011, we started out by just looking at domestic cider makers, but then we got a lot of requests for more information. So we added international imported ciders. We have 120 importers currently, and I know there are many more than that, but we're adding to those. We've also got equipment. I have cider makers come in and looking for, okay, there's a particular item they might need. There's some equipment listed for you. There are those who are looking for apples of a particular type, heritage apples. We've got some of that. So there's a lot of information. Festivals, associations that are in there. We currently have 100+ pages of information with thousands of links. So if you get a chance to check it out, it might be of use for you too. In 2013, because we were doing all this, we began collecting actual data on you, the cider makers. Not just putting it in the website, we created a database about you. We currently have 13,000 data entries on you, the cider makers. We know more about you than any one of you does about everyone else. So be careful. We have that all in our database, and we collected this survey data. We started posting it in 2014. The survey data we collect on you comes from your websites, from your social media sites. Remember, everything's in the world today on the internet, so I'm able to get almost everything that way. However, if not, I'll give you a call, and we'll talk about it. I'll try to make sure that I've got only the right information within the site, the things that you want to have seen when it's going forth before a cider drinker. Now let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. Nielsen has done an excellent job. If you all noticed this morning, fabulous, you were all here, I know, watching and amazed at all the numbers. What are they showing? They're showing you the important things that you as a business must know. What is your community? Who are you selling to? Who's your market? Who are the players that are out there that you're selling to? And what do your sales look like? What are the percentages of sales? The Cider Market, we take a different approach. We know that there are business analysts out there that are doing that. So what we've done is we look at you as a community. We look at you, we want to understand the who, what, where, and how of the cider community itself, the cider makers that are out there. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to give you that. We're going to provide some comparatives, internal and external, between you and, for example, the wine industry and the beer industry. We're going to talk about some whys. Why did this happen at this particular time with your industry? Where did this come from? For the whys, I don't have any answers. I don't have any really good answers. I got a couple that I might propose something, but I really don't have good answers. What we're doing is putting forth some information and some questions that you, the cider professionals, hopefully can answer for yourself. Or you'll at least be able to put yourself within that picture and know that, okay, this is what it means to me. Here might be some implications for me. This is the first interesting slide. So we're going to start with what are the cider makers in our database and what does this look like for growth over time as you as a community. Cider maker website pages for domestic makers include all the cider makers we've identified who solely or with another alcoholic beverage type produce at least one hard cider prepared. So everyone up here produces and sells at least one hard cider prepared. And only those cider makers that are operational today in 2018 are included in these charts. We have over 40 that we know of that had come up and no longer are operational during these years, and we don't include them. This is just the active cider community that you're seeing up there for numbers. And for an apples-to-apples comparison, all the cider maker dates that you're seeing are determined by the first time a commercial cider is sold. Not by when you're licensed, not by when you launch as an organization. That may take you a couple of years. And if you're a winery or a brewery, it may have been decades since you've been open before you actually put a cider on the market. So this is when your first cider was sold that we have it up here. Now we identify the new cider makers through articles in the press, again, social media is fabulous, when you enter a cider competition somewhere in the U.S., and we'll see your name and we'll go track you down if we can. When you join an association, we look at their wonderful list and see who's in there. And then such as Eric West's excellent cider guide, review that, or you contact us directly, and almost every week I'll get an email from somebody that says, hey, you missed me. I said, well, good, I'm glad you're connected now, because I don't want to miss you. I want to get you in there. So as of January 5th, 2018, the Cider Market website included 820 cider makers, producing, get this, over 3,600 different cider styles. 3,600 different styles that you all are producing on this. Some of you are really prolific. And so we're seeing some good numbers of the types of ciders that are available when you want to come in and have a good drink. Among the 820, 16 we have listed currently as coming soon in 2018. But we know they're going to open. We can feel it, we can see it with the equipment that's being put in there. And we know there's going to be many more. We also have 30 additional ones we're tracking that we're not so sure are going to open in 2018. And we found that this could be a tough business to get the door open. That those that we thought were going to do something in a particular season, it may have been another year or so before they did. And then there are many more listed as cideries in planning at the association that are not on this website. However, we are really sure 2018 is going to be about as good as 2017 and the others for the numbers that will open, and we'll show you, as you look up here, you see the aggregates, but I'll show you the years in a little bit here. And in fact, in this room, I should imagine there are any number of you that are going to be opening this coming year, and they're just not there yet. We have 7 more already identified in the last 2 weeks. So we're actually at 827, which is not the numbers you're seeing up there. So we have 827 we have identified cider makers. Now the first chart up here, I want to emphasize again, this is still those who are operating commercially today, and then aggregates how many of them are operational through each year. Notably, starting in 2008, where you see that nice red curve suddenly launching in the sky, starting in 2008, 90% of all cider makers have begun work since then, have begun operation since then. 90% of you have started since 2008. Thus, although you've got a long lineage, a long history in the cider making world, you're a very young community. You have not been here that long, but you're going to be doing great things for the future. Great young community coming out. Why the sudden rise in 2008? We're going to talk about this, so I'll give you something in a couple more slides to think about why that might have occurred in 2008. One obvious question for those of you now looking to open a cider. if the numbers are rising rapidly, you got 820 cider makers today, when will the market be saturated with cider makers? When are you going to have too many of them? I don't know. But what I do know is that there are over 9,600 wineries in America. There are over 5,500 breweries in America. I think there's room for more cider makers. Next chart. Let's take a little look at who you are as a type. Because you're not all cidery cider makers. You are cider makers who come from other backgrounds. We have other types of interests. This chart looks at the who and what of your community. Reminder again, these are all, you have to have one cider to make the chart, at least one cider to vary. And you have to be doing commercially operational today. Of note, 31% of those making cider today that we've located and put in our charts make a primary beverage other than cider. They make a wine, they make a beer, they make a mead. And they've added cider to their lineup. And in fact, that's up from 27% from 2014. So is that a trend line? Are we starting to see more non-cidery based cider makers appearing in the marketplace? I think it is. I think it's going to continue. I think it's very easy if you're a winery or a brewery to add another cider, to add a cider to your lineup that you haven't had before. Very simple for them to do that, and they get into the industry very quickly having the same types of equipment and processes. So I think it is going to be. The challenge for us as we record the numbers of new starts in existing breweries and wineries is that when they add a cider, it is not necessarily big news. It's not the type of thing that hits the internet as quickly and as easily as when you open a new cider maker, a new cider somewhere in a region. So we may be missing a lot of them. That 31% actually may be a very low number for the numbers of winery, breweries, and meaderies that have ciders in their mix. Also in here, we're looking at brewers. When we talk about a brewer, we're also including those who are owned by big beer. We're including those cider makers who, in fact, came along with the wonderful lineage that they have now of a big beer company and the backing of that company. But we've considered them a cider in our numbers. So if you're looking at that, Angry Orchard is considered a cidery, not a brewery, even though they may have that as some background. All right, now let's look at new starts by year. In 2012, by where? In 2012, we identified cider makers in 36 states. Today, you're in 48, along with Washington, D.C., next to my house. We have two of them in there now in the nation's capital. The only holdouts are Nevada and Wyoming. Who's here? Anybody here from Nevada or Wyoming? No, there's still holdouts. All right, we got 2 states left. We got open cider. You're reaching out there. Not surprisingly, nearly 70% of the cider makers are located in the more traditional apple-growing states. So you got your New York and your Washington and Virginia, where we have a lot of apples also. The majority of cider makers are located in those states, as you can see by looking up here. Of note, New York has been, since I started looking at this, it continues to be the biggest cider maker state. They've got a lot of apples, that helps. But they've also got really some very useful and powerful support at the state legislatures that have opened up a lot of laws and regulations and allowed them to do more in New York than you might find in other states. And it shows by the number of cider makers they have. In California, which was, when we started, the 5th largest cider maker state, they're now typically 2nd or 3rd. And they're in a head-to-head competition with Michigan. They're constantly shifting back and forth between the two of them. Now let's look at starts separately, a little bit from a different perspective. We're going to look at these by year, the when and why. The earliest currently operational U.S. cider maker that we've discovered is from 1881. It says they were delivering hard cider in 1881, and they're doing it today. Now, they obviously were not the only cider maker in 1881. They were obviously, I hope, not legally selling cider during Prohibition. but they are still the oldest one that we've uncovered. So if you know of a cider maker that's older than 1881, been around longer than that, please let us know, and we'll add them in. In the mid-1980s and 90s, along with new cideries, more existing wineries and breweries began to produce cider, followed by a significant rise in numbers for all four producer types in 2008. With cidery-based cider makers still taking a wide lead with 69% of all starts. So cidery-based is still 69% of the total out there for who's making cider. But again, why in 2008? One possibility. Perhaps as American alcoholic beverage consumers have already shown other beverage types that they're ready for change. They're ready for something to do something new. They're ready to drink something new. It's not long neck down in Texas anymore. They're looking for a different kind of a beverage to try. From the mid-1970s, when California won the prestigious French Judgment of Paris, wineries have rapidly opened across the nation to exceed 9,600 in all states. In 1979, there were only 44 breweries. In 1993, there were 500. Today, there's 5,500 that are out there. That's people looking for a different taste. That's looking for something new. And of the 300 plus meaderies today, over 50% have opened since 2008. Something about 2008, something magic there. Although still lagging well behind wine and beer, craft cider production may have benefited from all the shifts that have occurred in these other industries, to include also the distilled, with the rums and the vodkas and the others that have happened over the last years. But that desire for change in the last couple of decades. So why 2008? Perhaps it was just cider's turn. It was just when it became your opportunity to grow. The last slide on cider starts, and I think this is probably the most interesting one, as it shows what's happening in the last few years. The first one indicated a tremendous rise in cider makers. This one shows something else happening in these last years. We talked about the rise in 2008, but 2014 and 2015 recorded the greatest number of cider makers ever. You doubled in numbers in 2 years, in 14 and 15. Doubled in numbers from 288 to 579 in just those 2 years. But after that, you drop off. After that explosive growth in 2014, you begin to drop off in 16 and 17. Why? I don't know. Is it a complete drop? Is it a trend line that's dropping? Is it a plateau? Have we really reached a new plateau in the numbers that are coming in as cider makers on any given year? My suggestion is probably that latter. I'm looking at 2017, that number is going to grow. We always find more cider makers that we missed in the year following the year they opened. So that number is going to grow. I'll bet you're in the 115 to 120 with 2015 as being an outlier peak, and probably a plateau for the last 4 years. But we're not going to know any more about that until we have more data. More years come in to see whether that sustains as a plateau. But if it is, it's about 115 to 120 of you starting out new each year at the current rate as we see it. One of the impacts, let's talk about this, one of the impacts on these changes, and it was interesting because we also talked about this obviously this morning, is that at that same time, 2015 to 2016, or 2014 to 2015, we saw a drop in sales percentages in cider. We've been going up in big numbers every year until 2015, and then we see a reduction. We see some numbers coming down 2015 and 2016. Now, I don't know if that had any impact on those who were open cideries after 2015, but it may have been something they were looking at and certainly something to consider as you go forward. What are the impacts? So was this change a blip, or after 10 years of rising cider numbers have we plateaued? Are we at a point where that's probably a right number for how many we're going to see? Okay, now let's look at some other things besides where we came from by year, who you are by type. Let's look a little bit at how, not how you make cider. I don't make cider worth a darn. I don't pretend to tell you how to do it. But I do know something about how you get in front of your customers. And one of the most important ways appears to be tasting rooms. And the numbers you're seeing up there is the split between those who do and those who do not use tasting rooms in the cider industry. Tasting rooms are defined as any opportunity for a customer to taste the cider at a maker's location or a dedicated tasting room. And these range from some of you having to call me up for an appointment, I'll give you a taste at the barn, to very extensive tasting rooms on site or downtown with full food, full restaurant, and all else going on. As an aside, if you notice in the picture, if you can tell from back there, but I caught world-renowned Tom Oliver, a cider maker extraordinaire, who was giving tastings out in the Big Apple competition in England in 2012. So we're all doing tastings all around the world trying to make it happen. From the chart though, 57% of cideries have tasting rooms. Only 57%. Now that's up from 51% in 2014, so there's some growth in the number of tasting rooms that are open. But let's talk about why they might be important to have for you. Given the number of smaller cideries with only local distribution, cider makers might consider taking a lesson from the wine industry. The reports, and I quote, have become increasingly important outlets, for direct-to-consumer sales, particularly for small wineries that do not have extensive distribution arrangements. So if you're not getting it on the street in the towns or in the states, they're going to come to you to get it. They need to have a place where they can have it, and a tasting room makes that happen for you. Tasting rooms and direct-to-consumer sales at wineries, get this, account for 60% of all sales at small wineries. So if you're a small cidery and you don't have a tasting room, you may be missing out on a real opportunity to be selling your cider. Now let's look at cider's tasting rooms by where they're located. It's kind of an interesting breakout. As you can see, the big cider maker states like Michigan, Washington, Oregon, Pennsylvania, New York, all have the most number of cideries, also the most number of tasting opportunities that are there, with Michigan by far leading. The percentage of Michigan cider makers with tasting rooms is the greatest by far. What does that do? It enables them to have a much more full cider route. It gives them a destination for people to come to and drink cider. It's an experience for tourists as well as locals then to come and partake. It's the on-premise buy that Nielsen was talking about this morning that's occurring there at your tasting room. Wine and craft beer tasting routes and destinations have been increasing in many states. I don't know about you, but Virginia, we've got them. Everyone's got one now. It's a formal, here we are, come out and see us and come around and taste us on a Sunday or Saturday on a weekend. Also, as my local craft brewer stated one time, someone asked me, do you want more breweries open? He said, yeah, open them up. Open them up right near me. Because now we're a destination. Now I got 4 or 5 places for people to come and have some beer, and that's a lot better than if it's just me. So he was happy about seeing that. Also, I've been reading a number of cities that are rezoning areas in the downtown to have microbreweries, cideries, and wineries down there. They're creating destination zones in their cities to bring in that revenue for them, which is obviously where you need to be selling also. Of note, I find this interesting, I'm in California, I was raised in Southern California in San Diego. Of note, California, which is by far the highest number of wineries and wine tasting rooms of anywhere. They've got 400 wineries just in Napa Valley alone. And I remember in the early 70s going in there and hitting the tasting rooms, which in the early 70s were free. You didn't pay. You got to taste. You had a great day, and you might have bought a bottle or two as you went through there, but it was a great time in those years. California with the highest number, if you look up there on the chart, down to one end, it's circled, has the lowest number among the big states as a percentage of tasting rooms. I don't know why, but they just do. They may be missing a big opportunity in California to catch up with their winery brethren. Besides the immediate sales, what do tasting rooms do for you? They're especially important for cider because this is where you teach. This is where there's learning opportunities. This is where individuals who haven't had cider before that might be drugged there by someone who had some cider are going to learn about cider. They're going to learn about good cider and they're going to want to come back for more. Now we talked about some of the direct-to-consumer tasting room sales, the on-premise sales, but direct-to-consumer shipping has become very important too. Not so much yet in cideries, and I think that we need to get on board for that, but It certainly has become important. Direct-to-consumer sales are handled either through an online site. When they come into your site, you then make the sale there and ship it to them, or you direct them to a third party online like Beano Shipper, or one of those that takes care of that for you. Or they'll even call. People will call us, hey, got our numbers here, call us, fax us, and we'll ship it out to you this way. Shipping's tough. The effectiveness and reach of direct shipping through online sales differs greatly by alcoholic beverages. Beer is really slammed. They have a hard time shipping. Wine is doing great at shipping. And they make the difference. Perhaps have opened the door for you all. The 17%, we're only talking 17% of cideries that use direct-to-consumer shipping. And that number hasn't changed from 2014. So that's not happening yet. It's not building yet within the cider industry. However, wineries have proven since 2005, given sufficient legal leverage to loosen state direct sale laws and improve the online systems, there's an important revenue chain here. Wineries today, 45% of wineries that have cider also have direct sales and allow that to happen. So cideries are even lower than that as a percentage. But direct-to-consumer shipping is challenging. But is it any good? Is it effective? What is it going to do for you? Let's slip over to wine again and talk a little bit about what they've done. For wine, 2016 and 17 were strong direct-to-consumer shipping years. They were so strong that they contributed nearly 11% of total wine sales were done with direct-to-consumer shipping. That's $2.6 billion worth of wine that is being shipped. And they estimate this year they'll exceed $3 billion in shipping. Something that you might want to consider. I'm just throwing it out there. The ciders might want to think about this for their own use. Now let's shift over a little bit. Let's talk about your sales distribution. Distribution's key. It's your reach. It's how do you get it in front of your customer. If you're local only, then it's locals only that are going to be drinking your cider. The further you can reach, the further your distribution, the greater the number of customers that have an opportunity not only to drink it where they are locally, but perhaps incite others in other locations to drink. So we're looking at your reach over time for the 820. Now reach is for us is defined only by cider products. So what you're seeing up there is only cider products. If it's a winery or a brewery, they may have national reach for their brands, but they sell their wine, they sell their cider only locally. So what you're seeing up here is, again, trying to keep it apples to apples. What you see are only those sales having to do with cider. Today, over 68% of all cider makers are local-only sales. Local-only sales for 68% of you. Go back to what I was talking about, small wineries, small cideries. Local sales. What more can you do to excite more sales for you if you are small? Now this has increased 8% since 2014. So we had 60% that were local sales only in 2014. Now we're 68% local sales. Part of that is just the addition of additional cider makers. Interestingly, in 2014, 7.1%, a greater percentage of all cider makers had national sales in 2014. That number is down in 2018. Although the raw growth numbers show a good jump. So you get 57% more moving to national sales levels than there used to be. 40 of you doing this. National sales is defined by us does not mean you're in every single state. But it does mean you've got to reach well beyond your region. You're reaching across the country and you've got a greater number of states involved. Also, of the 5.9% national sales, they obviously include the big guys. This is the beer-owned cider makers who make the percentage of your sales. And why are they at the national level? Distribution. They were able to come right on and work with their parent company's distribution system and get out in front of the customer. It makes a huge difference. Let's move to another one. I want to get a sense of your community, and your community in this case has a tradition that is changing. Tradition that is now altering over time. Traditionally, you were a rural-based community. Cider making was done from the orchard on the farm in mostly rural settings up until very, very recently. We define it pretty easily. If you're in a city and you don't own a farm, you're urban. If you're out of the city, you're rural. So what has the move been here? All cider makers have shifted from being 79% rural-based to 59% in 2014. Today they're 50%. This is again a trend change. You're coming out of the rural settings and going into the urban. It's a trend change. Does it matter? Does it make any difference? There's urbanizing, if you will, that we're seeing here. Will it continue to do so? My guess is it will. It'll have to continue. And I'll tell you why. We'll talk a little bit about why. Since 2013, urban centers, urban cideries have overtaken all the rurals. We're opening more and more urban centers. And why we're opening more urban? Because often the urban cider maker is also a cidery in town, kind of like a craft brewer, got some food, got some wine, got a place to come visit, and a production center that's occurring in that town. So it's changing the complexion, it's changing what you are as an industry. Whether that's good or bad, you'll see, and you'll be the one to make that determination. But urbanization most definitely is occurring. In 2017, as you can see from the numbers up here, urban was over twice as many as rural for openings. That will shift some as I get more numbers in, but my guess is it's going to stay that way, and that's probably a trend line over time. Why? The other reason that's a trend line is because more breweries and more wineries and meaderies that are in urban centers are opening up and producing cider, and they're adding to that number that's coming in. And there are also some 25 that we've seen who are virtual cider makers, and you see this in the wine industry, but there are virtual cider makers. Cider makers who are not rural necessarily, are not urban necessarily, also don't own an orchard and don't make their own cider. They don't ferment it. It's all custom crushed with a custom label put on it, and they sell it. So there are virtual cider makers among the community too who are out there doing this, as there are in wine and beer. We'll move now similarly. Let's talk about where you get your fruit from. Who has your fruit? Where it started was you had it, because you were rural, and so you had it. You owned, leased, or shared an orchard, most likely, you or your friends or your family, and from that you then began to grow into the cider business. You probably first apple people, and then became cider makers. That is also changing. Urbanization is occurring. We're moving away from the rural. We're moving away from those who own their own orchards, who have their own fruit. Not to say that cider makers that purchase their fruit from orchards or from commercial producers elsewhere aren't getting quality apples. Just that there's a difference in the tradition that we've seen of fruit to cider, and who was making it and where it came from. The majority of cidery-based cider makers today, 58%, do not obtain their fruit in a more traditional manner. 58% no longer get their fruit from orchards that they own, or their family owns, or that they even have a solid connection to in that fashion. Again, is that good or bad? It's just a difference. It's what's occurring in your industry. Of note, obviously, those cideries who are now opening up in parts of the country where it don't have a lot of apples growing, it's kind of tough if you're out in the middle of the Mojave Desert and you want to open a cidery to get local apples. So you're definitely bringing them in. But that then adds further to the urbanization, if you will, or at least a move away from those who own their own orchards. And those who do own their own orchards, I'm finding, are often now having to buy juice and apples from others too. Because as you produce more, as you sell more, you don't have enough product of your own to sell. So you've got to go out and buy them and bring them in. All of which has obviously driven a greater market for cider apples and apples in general across the U.S. Last two charts, then you can nap in after that great lunch that you've had. Last two charts, we'll just look at these because, again, about your apples, about where they come from, just so you know where you fit if you do this or don't do this. If you're J.K. Scrumpy, you know you do organic. Well, how does this mean? What does this mean looking at these numbers? Our last two charts, based on the cider maker assumptions about organic, we don't second guess you. We don't try to validate what you tell us or what you posted. If you say that you use organic methods or that you're formally certified organic, we believe you and that's what we put you down as. So of those, though, only 7.6% of the cider makers use organic fruit, either their own or that they buy from an organic producer. So not a huge number that's doing organic, but I'm sure that there's a good market out there for those who prefer an organic product. So all the testaments, again, are by the cider makers, not by us. Lastly, heirloom apples, the big talk. What about heirloom apples? What about those great, what were British in many cases, UK standard apples that had come over, and who's using them and why? As you can see from the charts, the heirloom apple usage is not as high as one might have thought in here. The heirloom apples that we identify, the way we identify them, is we go to places like Albemarle, Cider Works in Virginia, their website. We look at the list of heirloom apples, and we match that up to what you say you're using in your blends and mix, and then we'll put you down to heirloom apples. Or if you say, I use heirloom apples, and don't even tell me what they are, I will still assume that you're using heirloom apples, and that the extra expense and effort that it goes to use heirloom apples you're proud about, and you're going to put it in there. Having said that, obviously using 100% of you using heirloom apples is probably unrealistic and unnecessary. Heirloom apples are frequently used in a more heritage-style cider. If you're not making a heritage-style cider, or you don't want to pay the extra cost for the heirloom apple, you may well not be using heirloom apples. It's as simple as that. But we do know that 27% of cidery-based cider makers use an heirloom apple, or state that they use an heirloom apple. So if you're a grower, and you want to think about that, I know that there are more heirloom orchards beginning now and being started up around the country. And I get calls about this saying, hey, do you think it's a good thing to plant some more heirloom apples? I don't know, here's some numbers. You're going to have to decide from there. So with that, we're going to summarize here. We're going to be done pontificating from the stage. I'm going to summarize for you what things have we talked about today. What are some of the key community considerations that you have as a cider community? First off, you've had some explosive growth. I mean, again, 90% of those sitting in this room had to start a business in 2008. You didn't exist before that, and the majority, even half of you, from 2014. So it's really a very young community that's out there. We've seen a slowing in 2016 from what the peak in 2015. We're not sure if that's a slowing trend or if it's a plateauing trend. I would suggest probably maybe a plateauing trend, and we'll see the 115 in 2017 catching up a bit more, and that might be a level that's sustainable for a while. Given the numbers of wineries and breweries out there, you've got a long ways to go, so I suggest hurrying up and start opening some more cider makers if you want to catch up. There are more players in the field. This is not the traditional cidery-based cider makers that are out here today, and more of those numbers are growing. More wineries that are putting them on, more breweries, more meaderies are opening up and creating, or that are already open, are adding a cider to their lineup. Something to consider as you're looking at this. Tasting rooms, I can't, from at least what I've seen for information, especially across the wine industry, I can't emphasize how much for smaller cideries this might be a very important thing for you to look at. Also, the direct-to-consumer sales, shipping sales, has picked up dramatically for wine. You get on that coattail. In many cases, in many states, legally, you can kind of ride with wine if you want to pretend like you're not a beer, and go that way and get your shipping done. I would suggest looking at that because they are great sales advantages and they're learning opportunities, they're teaching moments for you in cider. The majority of you are small craft cider makers. But I can tell you from what I've seen over the last 8 years, the little gals have grown up. Some of you have grown up dramatically in that 8 years, or even in the last 4 or 5 years. Some are still continuing to grow. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here again for you all as you move out in selling. It's an evolving landscape. What was rural is now urban. What was a local cider that was made from your local apple is now coming in from somewhere else. And the apple growers in Washington and Michigan, thank you for what you're doing. You're selling their product, so that's a great deal. There's a great connection between the two. So the changing practices and numerous whys. Why did things change in 2008? Why is it going in 2014? Where did you come from and how are you going to get to where you're going? We don't know. We've asked a lot of questions without definitively giving answers. We're simply providing information about your cider community for you to consider the whys and come up with what those implications may be for you. And so with that, finally, please go to our website, review your listing. First, are you there? Did I miss you? You're not listening? If you are we saying what you want to have said? Because I'm going to put in there exactly what I get from your websites or what you tell me you want in front of your customer. And we'll do that. Our website does not just simply have a link to you, it provides information about you, about every cider maker in America. So please take a look at that. And with that, I'll take any questions. Yes, sir? Yeah, asking about our good friends to the north. We do have Canadian cider at our website. What I'm presenting here today, and I could have had those numbers, but I don't. We focus mostly on the American drinker, and we focus mostly on American cider makers at our website. However, we do have, again, 120 from 18 countries or 20 countries now, 120 plus cider makers who are being imported, and Canada obviously being a huge one of those, and especially where you're practically backdoor neighbors along the border along there for drinking ciders. But yes, I apologize. We just don't have you up in here in this portion of it. Yes, ma'am.
What was the name of this cider that is still in operation?
From 1881? Okay, I thought something might. I try to say, if you don't give out B.F. Clyde's in New Mystic, Connecticut. They claim to be from 1881, and I've talked to them, and they're good folks, and they make their cider every year, and they're kind of old traditional world. They don't even open up except during those times when they're making cider and selling it to you. So it's give them a look.